Let me tell you something real, and I want every man listening to hear this loud and clear. Older women don't have time for foolishness. They've lived enough life, cried enough tears, cleaned up enough mess, and dealt with enough nonsense to know exactly what they want, and even more importantly, what they will never tolerate again. See, a woman who has grown, matured, and found her own peace, she's not chasing a man. She's not begging a man. She's not trying to fix, build, or raise a man. At this point in her life, she wants someone who brings ease, not exhaustion. A man who adds to her life, not one who drains it. She wants a man who knows who he is, knows what he wants, and knows how to show up the right way. And let me break this part down for the men who keep asking, why don't older women give me a chance? Because she's not impressed by the same things that impress young girls. You can't buy your way into her world with flashy things. You can't lie your way into her heart with pretty words. She's not interested in your potential. She's looking at your pattern. She's studying your consistency. She wants to know, are you a man of substance or just noise with a heartbeat? Older women want a man with emotional maturity because they've already seen what immaturity costs. They want a man who communicates, not one who hides behind silence. They want a man who understands loyalty, not one who treats commitment like a part-time hobby. And most of all, they want a man who knows how to give peace, because that's the one thing she refuses to sacrifice anymore. And let me be very clear, older women are not checking for a man because of his age. They're checking for a man because of his mindset. You could be younger, older, or somewhere in the middle. If you don't carry yourself like a man who respects her time, her value, her boundaries, she's gone. No second chances, no negotiations. The only type of man she's interested in is a man who shows up with purpose, confidence, kindness, truth, and stability. A man who makes her feel safe emotionally, spiritually, mentally. A man who understands that intimacy isn't just physical, it's trust. It's honesty. It's connection. It's showing up when life gets heavy. Because at this stage in her life, she doesn't want chaos. She doesn't want drama. She doesn't want a project. She wants partnership. ChatGPT said, here is keynote 1. Expanded to 600 words with no headings and no conclusion, exactly as you requested. Older women value emotional maturity above everything else because life has already shown them what happens when a man doesn't have it. They've lived through the storms caused by men who couldn't communicate, couldn't manage their emotions, and couldn't show up when it mattered. They've experienced the disappointment of being with someone who shuts down during conflict, runs away when things get tough, or lashes out instead of talking it through. By the time a woman reaches a certain stage in her life, she has learned deep in her bones that immaturity is not just tiring, it is expensive. It costs her peace, her sleep, her happiness, and sometimes even her self-esteem. So when she says she wants emotional maturity, she means she wants a man who has done the work on himself, a man who understands who he is, what he feels, and how to love without wrecking the person standing beside him. Emotional maturity shows up in the small moments. It's the difference between a man who listens and a man who waits for his turn to talk. It's the difference between a man who apologizes when he's wrong and one who twists the situation until she ends up apologizing for things she didn't even do. An older woman wants the kind of man who can sit down and say, let's figure this out. Instead of giving the silent treatment for 3 days, she wants someone who can express his frustration without becoming disrespectful. She wants someone who doesn't turn every disagreement into a battlefield. She's not looking for perfection. Nobody is perfect, but she is looking for growth, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and the ability to be responsible for his own actions. A man with emotional maturity understands his emotions instead of being controlled by them. He doesn't become insecure when she succeeds or when she has male friends or when she gets attention from the world. He doesn't feel threatened by her independence. In fact, he admires it. He supports it. He celebrates it. Emotional maturity creates space for two people to thrive without competing, without trying to overpower each other, and without needing to tear the other person down. It allows a man to stand beside her confidently instead of trying to stand above her. Older women also appreciate emotional maturity because it makes love feel safe. They probably experienced relationships where love felt unpredictable, unstable, or inconsistent. They know what it feels like to love someone who doesn't show love back in a healthy way. They know what it feels like to be afraid to speak up, afraid to express needs, afraid to ask questions. Emotional maturity removes fear from the relationship and replaces it with trust. When a man has grown emotionally, he doesn't punish her for being vulnerable. He doesn't make her regret opening her heart. Instead, he treats her vulnerability like something valuable, something to protect and honor. Another reason emotional maturity matters so much is because older women have reached a point where they value peace more than passion. They want love that is steady, not chaotic. They want someone who can be calm when life becomes stressful. They want a man who can talk through problems, understand her perspective, and share his without shouting or shutting down. They want a man who knows how to reassure instead of provoke, who knows how to comfort instead of criticize, and who knows how to hold space for both of their emotions without making her feel like her feelings are a burden. And finally, emotional maturity is attractive to older women because it shows that a man has learned from his past. He's not repeating the same cycles, not blaming everyone else for his failures, not running from responsibility. He's grown. He's evolved. He's ready for something real. And that readiness, that emotional discipline and self-control is exactly what makes him valuable to a woman who refuses to settle for anything less. When a woman reaches a certain stage in life, peace becomes her top priority. And that is why she wants a man who brings peace, not problems. She has already survived stress, heartbreak, disappointment, confusion, and chaos from people who didn't know how to love her properly. She has already spent years fixing, healing, forgiving, and trying to make things work with men who only added weight to her shoulders instead of taking any off. So now she protects her peace like it's something sacred, because it is. Peace is the one thing she refuses to trade for a relationship. And any man who wants to be in her life must understand that. A peaceful man isn't someone who never disagrees or never has flaws. It means he knows how to handle moments of tension without turning them into war. He knows how to speak instead of shout, how to listen without interrupting, and how to understand instead of assuming. A man who brings peace doesn't storm out over small issues or create drama to feel powerful. He doesn't play mind games, go silent for punishment, or start arguments just for attention. Instead, he approaches conflict with patience. He tries to solve problems instead of deepening them. Older women pay attention to these things immediately because they know how quickly a small issue can become a big wound when a man lacks emotional control. Peace also comes from consistency. Older women don't want to guess how a man feels, what he wants, or whether he is loyal. They don't want to play detective every time his behavior changes. They don't want uncertainty, mixed signals, or hot and cold affection. A peaceful man is consistent in his communication, in his actions, and in his intentions. His words match his behavior. He doesn't make promises he can't keep. He doesn't flirt with commitment one day and disappear the next. His presence feels stable, solid, and trustworthy. That kind of consistency gives a woman comfort, and comfort is a form of peace that she deeply values. Another part of peace is emotional safety. A peaceful man doesn't mock her feelings, belittle her dreams, or criticize her insecurities. He creates an environment where she can be soft, expressive, honest, and open. She doesn't have to be defensive or guarded around him. She doesn't have to pretend she's fine to avoid his reaction. With him, she can breathe, speak her truth, and be herself without fear of judgment or punishment. Emotional safety is something older women crave because they know what it feels like to be in relationships where they had to constantly walk on eggshells. A peaceful man also brings balance into a woman's life. He doesn't create more stress when she's already dealing with challenges. He doesn't depend on her to carry all the emotional weight. He doesn't drain her energy or leave her feeling exhausted after every conversation. Instead, he becomes a source of calm. He knows when to talk, when to listen, when to support, and when to give space. His presence feels like rest, like a place where she can recharge instead of feeling drained. Finally, a peaceful man respects her boundaries and lifestyle. He doesn't try to control her, limit her, or pull her away from the things that matter to her. He understands her need for independence, her career, her family, her routines, and her priorities. He knows that peace doesn't just come from the relationship. Peace also exists in the life she's built. A man who truly brings peace fits into that life without disrupting it. Older women want peace because they've lived long enough to understand how valuable it is. And the man who brings that peace becomes someone she treasures, trusts, and chooses without hesitation. When a woman reaches a stage in her life where she's grown, healed, and learned from her past relationship, she stops being impressed by things that used to grab her attention when she was younger. Age doesn't fool her. Looks don't fool her. Smooth words or charming smiles don't fool her. What matters to her now is consistency and honesty. These two qualities tell her more about a man than anything he could ever claim to be. She has learned the hard way that a man's pattern reveals his truth far better than his promises. Consistency isn't just about showing up when it's convenient. It's about showing up when life gets messy, when schedules get tight, when moods aren't perfect, and when circumstances change. A consistent man doesn't love her only when he feels good. He doesn't disappear when things get difficult or when he's stressed. He stays steady, present, and reliable. He communicates even when he's tired. He keeps his word even when something more exciting appears. Older women notice these behaviors right away because they've lived through relationships where a man's attention came only in bursts, here today, gone tomorrow. That kind of instability taught them the value of a man who doesn't waver. Honesty is equally important. The truth may hurt sometimes, but lies hurt deeper and longer. Older women know that lies don't just break trust. They break the foundation of the relationship. They destroy safety. They create doubt. And they turn love into confusion. A man who is honest, even when it's uncomfortable, stands out because honesty requires maturity and courage. He has to be comfortable with who he is to tell the truth. He has to value her enough to give her clarity instead of illusion. Older women appreciate a man who says exactly where he stands, how he feels, and what he wants. They don't have the energy for guessing, games, or emotional puzzles. They want straightforward, transparent communication. This is why mixed signals become an immediate red flag to an older woman. She no longer entertains someone who says one thing and does another. She doesn't waste time deciphering whether a man is serious or just passing the time. If his actions don't align with his words, she steps away without hesitation. She's reached a point in her life where confusion is too expensive emotionally and mentally. A man who is inconsistent might be exciting at first, but she knows from experience that inconsistency becomes exhausting. Older women also value honesty because it builds a deeper kind of intimacy. When a man is truthful, she feels safe opening up to him. She feels safe being vulnerable, sharing her fears, and expressing her dreams. She knows he won't use her honesty against her. She knows he isn't hiding secrets or living a double life. Trust becomes natural with a man who is consistent and genuine. Without honesty, even the strongest attraction dies quickly. Consistency and honesty also show a woman what a man's character truly is. Anyone can act right for a few days. Anyone can pretend during the first few weeks, but a man who is truly reliable will prove it every day in small, subtle ways: how he communicates, how he handles challenges, how he treats her when no one else is watching. Over time, his patterns reveal everything she needs to know about his loyalty, his intentions, and his respect for her. An older woman no longer chooses a partner based on potential. She chooses based on patterns. She wants someone whose behavior reflects his values, someone who has integrity in his actions, not just sweetness in his voice. Consistency tells her he's dependable. Honesty tells her he's trustworthy. And together, they tell her he's worth letting into her heart. Stability becomes one of the most attractive qualities to an older woman because she has already lived through relationships where everything felt uncertain, unpredictable, and emotionally unbalanced. She knows what instability looks like. She's dealt with men who didn't know what they wanted, men who kept changing their minds, men who created chaos wherever they went, and men who treated her heart like it was something temporary. After experiencing that, she begins to value stability the way she values oxygen, something necessary for her peace, her happiness, and her emotional security. She is no longer impressed by a man's charm if it's not supported by stability. She is drawn to the man whose energy is calm, grounded, dependable, and steady. Stability is not just financial, though financial responsibility plays a part. It's emotional stability, mental stability, and life stability. An emotionally stable man does not explode over small frustrations, nor does he shut down and disappear when things go wrong. He handles emotions with maturity. He knows how to talk through issues instead of running from them. He doesn't need her to fix him or rescue him or manage his feelings for him. He has dealt with his own past, healed what needed healing, and learned how to regulate his reactions. For an older woman, that emotional steadiness feels like safety. It tells her she won't be punished for speaking up. She won't have to walk on eggshells, and she won't have to calm storms she didn't create. Mental stability is important too. An older woman wants a man who knows who he is. She wants someone with direction, with purpose, with a sense of responsibility. She's not attracted to men who constantly change their identity, their goals, their values, or their story. She appreciates someone who has grown enough to understand himself. A mentally stable man doesn't project his insecurities onto her, doesn't accuse her out of fear, and doesn't sabotage the relationship because he's scared of commitment. He has clarity in his thinking, and clarity brings harmony. Life stability also makes a difference. A man doesn't need to be rich or perfect, but he must have his life in order. He should have routines, goals, discipline, and a sense of balance. He should know how to manage his responsibilities without making chaos for himself or for her. An older woman isn't looking to raise a grown man or rebuild him from scratch. She wants someone who is capable of standing on his own 2 feet. Stability in his lifestyle shows her that he's dependable. It shows he can support a relationship without losing himself or drowning her in his problems. Stability also creates trust. When a man's behavior is predictable in a positive way, it makes her feel secure. She knows he won't disappear during difficult times. She knows he won't suddenly switch up on her. She knows he won't let emotions or circumstances control him. Trust grows naturally when a man is consistent in how he treats her, how he communicates, and how he shows up. Older women don't want to constantly question a man's intentions. They want to feel safe in the relationship, and stability is what builds that safety. Another reason stability matters is because older women have reached a phase in life where peace is the highest priority. They want a relationship that enhances their life, not one that disrupts it. A stable man brings peace because he is predictable in the best way. She doesn't have to calculate what version of him she'll get each day. She doesn't have to mentally prepare for drama. She doesn't have to shrink herself to avoid triggering him. With a stable man, she feels like she can breathe. She can be soft, open, expressive, and emotionally present because the relationship feels steady beneath her. Stability is attractive because it's rare. Many men claim to be grown, but growth requires discipline and accountability. A stable man has both. And that consistency makes him the type of partner an older woman trusts with her heart. Respect, communication, and loyalty become non-negotiable for an older woman because she has already lived through situations where these qualities were missing. She knows what it feels like to be in relationships where she wasn't valued, where her voice wasn't heard, and where loyalty was treated like an optional choice instead of a commitment. After experiencing that kind of emotional imbalance, she becomes very clear about what she will and will not tolerate. Respect is the foundation she needs. Communication is the tool that keeps the relationship healthy, and loyalty is the promise that gives her emotional safety. Without these 3 things, she has no interest in being with anyone. Respect is the first thing she looks for because she understands her worth now. She knows who she is, what she offers, and what she deserves. A respectful man doesn't talk down to her, doesn't belittle her opinions, and doesn't try to control her. He values her independence, her intelligence, her strength, and her experiences. He doesn't treat her like a backup option or an accessory. He treats her like a partner. Respect shows in how he listens, how he speaks, how he disagrees, and how he supports her. An older woman pays close attention to these details because she refuses to invest in someone who cannot honor her as a human being first. Communication is equally important because she understands that silence, avoidance, and emotional games destroy relationships. She's been with men who shut down instead of talking, men who punish her with distance, and men who created confusion instead of clarity. She has no desire to repeat that pain. A man who communicates openly, calmly, and consistently is someone she can trust. She wants a man who isn't afraid to express his feelings, who can handle difficult conversations without losing control. and who listens to understand instead of listening just to defend himself. Communication doesn't mean talking all the time. It means staying connected, staying honest, and staying present even when things are hard. Older women appreciate this because communication is how love stays alive. Loyalty is something she no longer negotiates because loyalty determines the entire emotional safety of a relationship. She doesn't want a man who needs attention from multiple women. She doesn't want someone who entertains temptation, hides conversations, or creates situations that make her doubt him. She doesn't want to compete, question, or worry. Loyalty means he chooses her every day, not just when it's convenient. It means his actions match his commitment. It means he respects her even when she's not watching. For an older woman, loyalty is more than faithfulness. It's integrity, reliability, and devotion. She wants a man whose loyalty is steady, not selective. Together, these three qualities create stability in a relationship. Respect makes her feel valued. Communication makes her feel understood. Loyalty makes her feel safe. Older women don't play guessing games anymore. They don't try to fix disrespect, force communication, or beg for loyalty. They have walked away from enough situations to know that the right man will naturally embody these qualities. They don't chase potential, they choose maturity. A man who brings respect, loyalty, and communication makes the relationship feel light instead of heavy. She doesn't feel drained, anxious, or insecure. She doesn't feel like she's fighting alone. Instead, she feels supported, cherished, and appreciated. She feels like she can finally rest emotionally because she knows the relationship is built on real foundations, not shaky promises. As a woman grows older, she becomes wise enough to understand that beauty fades, excitement calms down, and passion shifts. But these three qualities, respect, communication, and loyalty, are what hold a relationship together for the long run. And that's why she refuses to accept anything less. An older woman reaches a point in her life where she no longer desires a relationship that feels like a responsibility, project, or a constant emotional repair job. She doesn't want to raise a man, fix a man, coach a man, or teach a man how to behave. She wants a partner, not a project. She wants someone who stands beside her, not someone she must drag along or build from scratch. And this shift happens because she has already spent years trying to shape, guide, or push men who weren't ready for real love. She has learned from those experiences that you cannot turn potential into maturity. A man either shows up ready or he doesn't. And she is done trying to make someone become something they clearly are not prepared to be. What she wants now is a grown man, not a perfect man, but a grown one, someone who knows himself, takes responsibility for his actions, and understands the weight of his words. A grown man does not play childish games. He does not pretend to commit and then disappear. He does not hide behind excuses or blame his past for his present behavior. He steps into the relationship with intention. He knows what he wants and communicates it clearly. He understands how to love without causing emotional destruction. This type of maturity is deeply attractive to an older woman because she knows the peace that comes with a man who has outgrown chaos. A younger or less mature woman might be excited by unpredictability or chaos, but an older woman is drawn to stability and emotional confidence. A grown man doesn't get intimidated by her strength. He doesn't feel threatened by her independence. He doesn't compete with her success or shrink from her ambition. He celebrates it. He stands with her, supports her, encourages her. He understands that real connection is built from two whole individuals, not one whole person carrying someone who refuses to grow. Older women also prefer a man who has emotional discipline. This means he knows how to regulate himself. He doesn't explode at every frustration, nor does he shut down and refuse to communicate. He doesn't punish her with distance or silence. Instead, he handles disagreements with maturity, listens when she speaks, and expresses himself without cruelty. His emotional discipline makes her feel secure and respected because she knows she can be honest without triggering an unnecessary explosion. She knows her voice will be heard, not dismissed. A partner, not a project, also takes accountability. He apologizes when he's wrong, not because he is weak, but because he is wise. He understands that accountability builds trust. A man who refuses to acknowledge his mistakes forces a woman into a caregiver role, constantly soothing wounds she didn't cause. An older woman has no interest in that dynamic anymore. She wants someone who can look at himself honestly and grow without being pushed. Accountability is a sign of maturity, and maturity is what she values. Another reason she prefers a partner over a project is because she has her own life, ambitions, routines, and peace. She doesn't want a relationship that demands all her emotional energy just to keep it functioning. She doesn't want to constantly explain basic respect, loyalty, or communication. She wants a relationship that enhances her life, not one that drains it. With a grown, emotionally mature, self-aware man, the relationship feels like partnership, like teamwork. They build together instead of one person building while the other contributes chaos. A grown man brings effort without being asked. He contributes without needing reminders. He understands her needs without making her beg for them. He carries his share of the emotional, mental, and practical weight. And because of this, she can relax, open her heart, and enjoy the relationship without being overworked. In her later years, she realizes that love should feel like support, not strain. It should feel like alignment, not correction. It should feel like choosing each other, not fixing each other. And that is why the only type of man she wants is one who comes ready, not perfect, but prepared. A partner, not a project. A grown man, not potential.